You are not broken. You are not lost. You are simply caught in thought. Most people don't realize this. Their mind is speaking constantly, and they believe every word. But just because a thought appears doesn't mean it's true. And just because you feel something doesn't mean it defines you. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology caught up. That freedom begins not by fighting your mind, but by watching it, quietly, calmly, without judgment. Your thoughts are not you. They are events, like passing weather. You are the sky. In this episode, we explore one of the most liberating ideas in Stoic philosophy, that your thoughts are not your identity, that the voice in your head is not the author of your life unless you let it be. Through awareness, detachment, and deliberate observation, you'll learn how to reclaim the power you've unknowingly given to your thoughts. This is where inner peace begins. Let's begin this journey, not to silence the mind, but to step beyond it. 1. Observe, don't absorb. Most people wake up and are instantly consumed, not by the world outside, but by the world inside their own heads. The moment their eyes open, thoughts flood in. Some are small: what to eat, where to go, what to do. But others pierce deeper. I'm behind. I should be further by now. Why does this always happen to me? And before they've even had time to stretch, they're already drowning in thought. This is the trap. Not thinking itself, but identification with thought. We don't just have thoughts. We become them. And in doing so, we absorb everything. The fear, the self-doubt, the imaginary scenarios that never actually happen. It's like standing in the rain and believing the storm is who you are, not what's passing over you. But the Stoics saw the mind differently. They never tried to stop the thoughts. They trained themselves to stand apart from them, to observe, to create distance between stimulus and self. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And that principle applies just as much to your inner world as it does to the outer one. To observe rather than absorb means to stay conscious. It means you don't get swept away by every narrative your mind offers. You treat thoughts like clouds drifting across the sky. You can notice them, describe them, even learn from them. But you don't have to hold on to them. You don't have to let them define you. This subtle shift in awareness is everything, because once you start observing, you begin to realize something profound. Most of your thoughts aren't true. They're habits, echoes, automatic scripts written by past experiences, fears, traumas, and beliefs you never chose. And yet, without awareness, you absorb them as if they are gospel, as if they are you. But they're not. And when you can watch the thought without becoming the thought, you regain your power. You reclaim your space. You build that sacred gap between what the mind says and what you choose to believe. That gap is where peace lives. That gap is where wisdom begins. Let's take an example. Imagine you make a mistake at work. Something small, a missed email or a poor presentation. A thought arises. I'm a failure. In a state of absorption, you believe it. Your posture drops. Your mood sinks. You withdraw. But in a state of observation, you pause. You notice. That's just a thought. It doesn't define me. I can learn from this. I'm still capable. The situation hasn't changed, but your power within it has. Observation gives you agency. Absorption steals it. And there's a deeper layer here. When you train yourself to observe your thoughts, you start to notice which ones are actually helpful and which ones are just noise. you realize how much of your internal dialogue is fear in disguise, or ego, or inherited patterns from people who didn't know better themselves. And suddenly, you're not just living, you're consciously choosing how to live. That's what makes this practice so essential to Stoicism, because you can't live with virtue, clarity, or courage if you're constantly reacting to every storm your mind invents. You have to step above it. You have to become the one who watches, not the one who drowns. So how do you start? Begin simply. When a strong thought or emotion arises, ask yourself, is this observation or absorption? Do I have to believe this thought? Would I speak this thought to someone I love? These questions bring you back. They anchor you in presence. And from presence, you can choose your response instead of defaulting to reaction. In the end, your thoughts are not enemies. They're messengers. But you don't have to let every messenger move into your home. You don't have to turn every sentence into a story, every story into a truth, and every truth into a burden. Just observe, watch the mind, respect it, but never forget, you are not it. Because you're not here to live as a reaction, you're here to live with intention. 2. The thinker is not the thought. It's one of the most important truths you'll ever understand, and one of the hardest to remember. You are not your thoughts. You are the thinker, the observer, the awareness behind the stream. But the mind, when left unchecked, will try to convince you otherwise. It will say things like, I'm worthless, or I can't handle this, or they must not care about me. And because the voice sounds like yours, you'll believe it speaks the truth. But the Stoic knows better. He trains himself to recognize the distinction between the one who thinks and the thoughts themselves. Why does this matter? Because identity shapes reality. If you believe every thought is you, then you'll be dragged into every false identity your mind throws at you. You'll confuse temporary moods with permanent truths. One moment of fear will mean you are fearful. One angry thought means you are an angry person. But there is a gap, a sacred gap, between the thought and the self. And the more aware you are of that gap, the freer you become. Let's consider an example. You're walking into a room full of strangers. A thought arises, I don't belong here. In that moment, you have a choice. If you believe that thought defines you, you shrink. You avoid eye contact. You retreat into silence. But if you recognize it as just a passing idea, a conditioned response, not a reflection of reality, then you stay centered. You breathe, you smile, you enter the room as yourself, not as your fear. This is the difference between reaction and presence, between living under your mind and rising above it. The Stoics spoke of this often. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That sentence only makes sense when you understand that your mind isn't one unified entity. It's a landscape. Some thoughts are useful, others are toxic. Some are calm, wise, and clear. Others are remnants of fear, shame, or old wounds you never addressed. But none of them are you, unless you choose to merge with them. The thinker, the conscious awareness that notices thoughts without judgment, is who you truly are. That part of you has clarity. It can step back, breathe, and respond wisely. And when you live from that place, you stop being thrown off course by every mood or mental storm. You develop a kind of inner steadiness, a quiet power that no one can give or take from you, because it was yours all along. But here's the truth. This takes practice. The mind is fast. It will fire off 10 thoughts before you've had a chance to catch even one. That's okay. You don't need to catch all of them. You just need to catch the one that matters most, the one that tries to tell you who you are. When that thought appears, pause, observe, remind yourself, this is just a thought. I am the thinker. I choose whether this shapes me or passes through me. The more often you do this, the stronger that mental muscle becomes. Eventually, you start to live less from reaction and more from reflection. You begin to see thoughts for what they are, suggestions, not commands, possibilities, not truths. And that's where self-mastery begins. You don't silence the mind by force, you liberate it by understanding. And once you see that the thinker is not the thought, you're no longer at war with yourself. So the next time your mind whispers something limiting, painful, or irrational, don't fight it and don't fuse with it. Just step back and remember, that's not me. That's just a cloud. I am the sky. You are not here to believe every thought. You are here to lead your mind, not follow it. 3. Let thoughts pass like clouds. Imagine lying on your back in a quiet field, looking up at the sky. The clouds move slowly overhead, some small and wispy, others dark and heavy. You don't chase them, you don't fight them, you simply watch. This is how the Stoic mind treats thoughts, not as enemies to battle, not as truths to worship, but as clouds, temporary, shifting, and harmless when left alone. But that's not how most people live. They see a thought and immediately follow it, obsess over it, attach to it as if it contains their identity. If the thought is joyful, they cling. If it's dark, they panic. Either way, they forget the most important truth: the thought will pass, if you let it. Stoicism teaches us to sit with awareness, not to rush to reaction. The moment you become reactive to every thought, positive or negative, you lose clarity. But when you adopt the posture of an observer, something profound happens. You realize that your thoughts aren't permanent, and if they aren't permanent, then neither are your fears, your cravings, your anxieties, or your shame. You don't need to fix every thought. You don't need to argue with it or suppress it or prove it wrong. You just need to let it float by like a cloud in the sky. Let it drift. Let it fade. And in doing so, you reclaim the calm beneath the storm. Let's say a thought arises: I'm falling behind in life. That thought can trigger a spiral: anxiety, comparison, self-doubt. But what if, instead of engaging with it, you watched it gently, noticed it, named it, then let it pass? You'd find it has no power. You didn't deny it. You didn't obey it. You simply allowed it to move through your awareness without controlling you. This is where Stoic wisdom meets mindfulness, not in resisting thought, but in recontextualizing it. Thoughts come, thoughts go. The mind generates them constantly. It's what it's designed to do. But you are the sky. You remain. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." What he meant was this: most of our pain comes from thoughts we hold on to too tightly, from storms we refuse to let pass. But you can live differently. You can learn to let go without running. You can be still without being passive. And you don't need to be perfect. You just need to practice. Practice catching the moment when a thought arises. Practice labeling it. That's fear. That's judgment. That's doubt. And then gently watching it leave. Over time, this practice becomes your shield, your peace, your quiet confidence in a noisy world. You'll begin to understand something powerful. Peace doesn't come from having no thoughts. It comes from having the space between them. And in that space, there's clarity. In that space, you choose your direction rather than being pulled by the current of every passing mood. So the next time your mind offers something unkind, overwhelming, or tempting, pause, breathe, look up, let it pass. You are not your thoughts. You are the sky they pass through, because clouds don't stay, but the sky always remains. 4. Choose awareness over attachment. Attachment is subtle. It doesn't always come with a label. Sometimes it hides inside what feels like care, ambition, or self-protection. But the Stoics knew that attachment to thoughts, outcomes, identities is a hidden chain. It binds us to what we cannot truly hold. And nowhere is this more dangerous than in the realm of thought. When you attach to a thought, you no longer see it clearly. It becomes part of your identity. If it says, "I must succeed," or "I'm a failure," you grip it. If it says, "They must like me," or "I'm unworthy," you obey it. Attachment creates emotional dependency, and when that thought is threatened, when things don't go as planned, when someone disapproves, your peace collapses with it. But awareness is different. Awareness doesn't resist the thought. It sees it, studies it, but it never fuses with it. Awareness says, "This thought is present right now. I don't have to run from it, but I also don't have to believe it." And that space between thought and belief is where your power lives. This is what Epictetus meant when he taught that we are disturbed not by events, but by the views we take of them. The views, the thoughts, aren't the enemy. It's our clinging to them that causes pain. The Stoic doesn't aim to silence his thoughts. He aims to be free from the need to be ruled by them, and freedom begins with awareness. The ability to step back and say, "That's an interesting thought. But is it helping me? Is it leading me where I want to go?" When you live in attachment, every thought becomes urgent. It must be answered, resolved, satisfied. But when you live in awareness, you let thoughts rise and fall like waves. You stop chasing clarity in the mind and begin finding it in your posture, your stillness, your presence. Let's ground this in a real moment. Imagine someone you care about suddenly pulls away. Your mind begins to spin. What did I do wrong? Are they upset? Did I ruin something? Attachment pulls you into anxiety. You begin to live inside the story your mind is writing. But awareness allows for a pause, a breath. It says, "Here is a thought, a fear of loss, a need for reassurance. I acknowledge it. I don't have to push it away, but I also don't have to live from it." That's the pivot, from unconscious reaction to conscious response. Detaching from thought doesn't mean becoming numb. It means becoming discerning, aware of which thoughts serve your character and which erode it. You can still think deeply, still care deeply, but you do so without letting every idea, fear, or story take the wheel. And over time, this practice of awareness over attachment becomes your compass. You begin to navigate life with steadiness. Thoughts come and go, but you remain rooted, grounded, capable of clarity in the middle of mental noise. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be like the rocky promontory against which the waves continually crash. It stands firm and tames the fury of the sea around it." That's awareness, not passive, not fragile, but deeply anchored. So when your next thought arises, especially the difficult one, meet it not with attachment, but with awareness. Let it speak. Let it pass. You don't need to hold it to understand it, and you don't need to absorb it to respect it. You're not here to be controlled by thought. You're here to be guided by clarity. 5. You are the space beneath your mind. Most people think they are their minds, that their identity begins and ends with the constant stream of thoughts, worries, and judgments flowing through their heads. But what if the truth is deeper? What if your essence is not found in the words of the mind, but in the silent space beneath it? The Stoics often wrote about this inner depth, a place not touched by chaos, not stirred by every passing mood, not dependent on what others say or do. It's the part of you that simply is, constant, aware, and calm. Like the ocean floor beneath the crashing waves, you are not the surface-level noise of the mind. You are the space it moves through. In modern life, this is easy to forget. We're taught to react instantly, to texts, to social media, to criticism, to praise, and each reaction reinforces the illusion. I am my anger. I am my stress. I am my ambition. But if you sit still for just a few moments, something else emerges, a deeper awareness, a quiet watcher that notices the thought but is not bound to it. That space, that quiet inner witness, is where your true self lives. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He wasn't talking about escape. He was pointing to the refuge within, the space that can observe without judgment. The place where wisdom grows, not from having fewer thoughts, but from being less attached to them. Think of your mind like a river. Thoughts are the current, always moving, sometimes calm, sometimes wild. But you, the real you, are not the water. You are the riverbed, the foundation, the thing that holds everything in place without being swept away. When you start identifying with that space, instead of the mental noise, you begin to act from strength. You respond rather than react. You speak with clarity rather than reactivity. You listen to others without immediately filtering their words through your insecurities. Why? Because you're grounded, not in the storm, but in the silence beneath it. Here's something practical. The next time you feel overwhelmed by thought, by fear, guilt, anger, desire, don't try to fix the feeling. Don't try to win the mental battle. Instead, go inward. Focus on the space that's aware of what you're feeling. That still part of you that says, I see what's happening here. That shift alone is powerful. The Stoics didn't seek emotional numbness. They sought clarity. They didn't run from thought. They stepped back far enough to see it in perspective. They knew that without inner space, there's no freedom. You become a prisoner of every inner narrative. But with space, with grounded awareness, you become free. Free to choose your response. Free to let go. Free to stand firm when others collapse. Because you're not building your life on passing thoughts. You're building it on something far more stable, presence. So remember this, when your mind feels like too much, don't fight it. Go deeper, sink beneath it. Find the ground under the noise. Because that space inside you, quiet, aware, unshaken, is not just peace. It's who you've been all along. 6. Train your inner witness. Every day your mind is full of voices. Some come from your upbringing, others from your fears. Some whisper insecurity, others shout ambition. But behind them all, there's another presence, one that doesn't speak, but simply observes. The Stoics called this the rational soul. Today, we might call it the inner witness. And training this witness, sharpening your ability to observe yourself without judgment, is one of the most important disciplines of the Stoic path. Why is it so powerful? Because without an inner witness, you're just living on autopilot. Thoughts come and you follow. Emotions rise and you react. The day controls you instead of you controlling how you show up in it. But the moment you awaken the observer within, the part of you that can notice what you're feeling, notice what you're thinking, without becoming consumed by it, you gain leverage over your life. Training this witness isn't about meditation alone, though that helps. It's about developing the habit of stepping back mentally, even in the middle of a conversation, even while stuck in traffic, even during conflict. The practice begins with a simple question: what am I feeling right now, and why? That question interrupts the automatic flow of reaction and invites you back into conscious presence. The Stoics didn't deny emotion, they refined it. Seneca wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." This observation only becomes useful when we have the mental awareness to see what our imagination is doing, to watch the stories it creates rather than drowning in them. Let's say someone criticizes you unfairly. Instantly your mind produces a chain reaction. They don't respect me. I need to defend myself. I have to say something back. But if your inner witness is awake, it steps in with stillness. It notices the rising anger without indulging it. It observes the urge to defend and lets it breathe without obeying it. Suddenly, you're not the insulted self. You're the conscious presence behind the scene, choosing your next move instead of reacting blindly. Training the witness takes time. You'll forget. You'll fall into old patterns. But every time you remember to pause, observe, and reflect instead of reacting, that's a repetition. That's mental strength. And over time, those repetitions compound into a state of being, less reactive, more centered, less chaotic, more clear. Modern neuroscience supports this too. The more we practice mindfulness and self-observation, the more our brain rewires itself toward emotional regulation and calm. But the Stoics knew this long before the science. They lived it. They trained their inner witness the way an athlete trains their body, daily, deliberately, and with purpose. So don't just try to feel better. Don't chase motivation. Don't beg for silence from your mind. Instead, begin cultivating the part of you that can watch all of it with calm. That inner space is not passive. It's the seat of your deepest power, because the world can provoke you, but only you can choose how long you stay provoked. The mind can race, but only you can decide if you'll follow it. And emotion can rise, but only your witness decides whether it becomes your identity. You don't need to silence the noise. You just need to remember, you are the one who hears it. 7. Label, don't live your thoughts. When a thought appears, the average mind either resists it or obeys it. I'm not good enough. The insecure mind believes it. They don't respect me. The angry mind clings to it. And in both cases, the thought becomes your world. You don't just have the thought, you start living from it. But what if there was a middle path, a Stoic path, one that neither suppresses the thought nor surrenders to it? That path begins with labeling. To label a thought means to identify it clearly without being consumed by it. It's the difference between saying, "I'm a failure," and saying, "There is a thought that I might be failing." The first becomes identity. The second becomes observation. And that shift, subtle, almost invisible, is the key to inner freedom. The Stoics knew the danger of living blindly in thought. Epictetus taught that it's not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. What he meant was, we suffer not from events, but from the meaning we assign to them. And we assign meaning automatically unless we pause and label. Let's say your mind offers a familiar script. They're ignoring me. They don't care. In the moment, that can feel true, but the Stoic doesn't ask, "Is it true?" He asks, "What kind of thought is this?" It's an insecurity, a fear of rejection, a need for approval. That's the label, and once it's labeled, it loses its grip. Labeling creates distance. It reminds you that your thoughts are not facts, they're patterns, some helpful, many not, formed by years of experience, habit, and fear. And that means they're not permanent. They're not sacred. They're not untouchable. They're just thoughts. Imagine carrying a heavy bag through the airport. You don't stop to examine it. You don't question what's inside. You just carry it because it's yours. That's how most people treat their mental baggage. But labeling invites you to open the bag, to say, "Oh, this is guilt. This is old shame. This is comparison." Suddenly, it's not mysterious anymore, and what is understood can be released. This is where modern therapy and Stoic wisdom beautifully overlap. Both invite us to be curious about our inner world, not judgmental, not reactive, just curious. The practice isn't about fixing every thought. It's about noticing, naming, and deciding whether to engage. Labeling can be as simple as saying silently to yourself, "That's fear," or "That's desire," or "That's the perfectionist in me speaking again." These moments don't erase the emotion, but they remind you that you're more than the emotion. You're the one seeing it. Over time, this skill rewires your mind. You stop living on emotional autopilot. You start making conscious choices. You start showing up not as a reaction to thought, but as a response grounded in clarity. So when the next wave of thoughts arrives, and it will, don't just believe them. Don't fight them. Name them. Watch how that one act brings space, light, and power into your experience. And in that space, you remember the truth. You're not your doubt. You're not your anger. You're not your past. You are the one who sees clearly and chooses wisely. 8. Shift identity from thinker to observer. Most people walk through life believing they are the voice in their head, the overanalyzer, the worrier, the planner, the critic. They identify so closely with that inner dialogue that they never question where it ends and where they begin. But the Stoics invite us to take a radical step back, to shift from being the thinker to being the observer of thought. This is not detachment out of avoidance. It's clarity through awareness. Why does this shift matter? Because if you're the thinker, you're constantly caught in the storm, solving, proving, defending. But if you become the observer, you're standing above the storm, not removed from life, but steady within it. Let's explore this with a simple moment. Imagine you're preparing for a difficult conversation. The thinker in you starts spinning. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they get angry? What if I look weak? In that moment, your entire sense of self collapses into the thought. You are the anxiety. You are the insecurity. But if you shift into the observer, everything changes. Now, you say, there's anxiety here. There's fear present. But I see it. I'm not inside it. I'm watching it. That shift is the foundation of Stoic discipline. It allows you to stay calm, focused, and honest, even when your emotions would rather you run or hide. Epictetus taught that we should examine our impressions before accepting them. That is, when a thought arises, don't just say yes to it. Hold it in your hands, turn it over, see where it leads. That's the observer's work. You are not just the product of thought. You are the architect of which thoughts you choose to follow. The modern world gives us endless distractions and labels to cling to. Anxious, high achiever, overthinker, perfectionist. But these aren't identities. They're patterns, and patterns can be seen. Once they're seen, they can be softened, and once softened, they no longer define you. You are not your patterns. You are the one who notices them. You are the space behind the label. That space is where strength lives. The thinker is reactive, caught in timelines, pressure, outcomes. The observer is responsive, rooted in the present, unattached to the noise. The thinker needs to fix everything. The observer lets things unfold, guided by values, not panic. This shift doesn't mean you stop thinking. It means you stop believing everything you think. It means that when the mind says you're not enough, you don't argue or agree, you just observe. And in that observation, the thought loses power. The observer doesn't numb emotion. It honors it, then asks, what's the wise response here? The observer doesn't chase control. It accepts what is and acts where it can. The observer doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be awake. So ask yourself today, are you living as the thinker or the one who watches the thoughts come and go? Are you inside the story, or are you seeing the story from the outside? Every time you choose observation over identification, you create space, and in that space lives freedom, clarity, and peace, the very essence of Stoic strength. 9. Awareness dissolves distortion. Every thought that passes through your mind comes with a lens, a frame. That lens might be fear, it might be past trauma, it might be insecurity, pride, resentment, or even hope. But whatever it is, it colors what you see. It shapes your perception. And if you don't notice the lens, you'll believe the distortion is reality. This is where awareness becomes your superpower, because when you cultivate the ability to notice, truly notice, how a thought is formed, what emotion it carries, and what story it's trying to convince you of, you begin to separate truth from interpretation. That separation is everything. That's where peace begins. Let's say someone doesn't respond to your message. Your mind might offer a story. They're ignoring me. I must have done something wrong. Without awareness, that becomes your reality. You feel rejected, anxious, maybe even angry. But if you're aware, if you're present, you catch the distortion. You see the story before it becomes your belief. And just like that, the emotion loses its grip. Awareness is like light. Distortion can only exist in darkness. When you shine the light of observation on your thoughts, the illusion fades. You see clearly again. The Stoics were masters of this. They understood that most suffering is not caused by life itself, but by how the mind interprets life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Think about that. You have the power to revoke your own suffering, but only if you see the distortion in time. This doesn't mean you become emotionless. It means you become wise, aware, able to hold space for feelings without letting them steer the ship. The goal isn't to kill emotion. The goal is to strip away the lies that emotion sometimes hides behind. And it's not just about catching negative thoughts. Sometimes the distortion is disguised as hope or fantasy or a desire to escape. If I just get that promotion, everything will feel better. Maybe, but maybe not. The Stoic sees this too, and recognizes the difference between grounded desire and unhealthy attachment. So how do you practice this? Start by slowing down. Don't rush to believe the first thought. Question it. Trace its origin. Ask yourself, is this thought coming from clarity or from fear? The very act of asking puts you in the seat of awareness. It interrupts the chain of automatic belief. And that interruption is everything. Over time, this awareness becomes second nature. You start to feel when something is off. You recognize when a thought is dragging you down a dark spiral, and instead of following it, you pause, you breathe, you return to what is actually true, not what the distortion wants you to believe. This is the kind of discipline that changes your life. Not flashy, not loud, but powerful. Quietly, awareness rewrites the way you see yourself, others, and the world. It doesn't promise control, it promises vision. And with vision, you make better choices. You suffer less. You live more. So the next time your mind offers a story that pulls you into anxiety or bitterness, don't fight it. See through it. Shine the light of awareness, because truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs space to be seen. And in seeing clearly, you begin to live freely. 10. Liberation starts with noticing. Before you can change anything, your emotions, your habits, your direction, you must first notice. That's it. Not force it, not fight it, not fix it in a rush. Just notice. This is where true liberation begins, not in grand achievements or sudden awakenings, but in the quiet recognition of what's happening inside you, moment to moment. Because when you start to notice, you reclaim your life from unconscious momentum, from cycles that repeat because you never paused long enough to examine them. The Stoics believed that philosophy wasn't just about knowledge. It was about perception, seeing clearly, responding wisely. They trained themselves to pause and examine not just the world, but their own role in it. Marcus Aurelius would reflect each night, reviewing his actions and thoughts, not to judge himself, but to understand himself. That's what noticing really is, a form of radical honesty. When you feel triggered, can you notice the surge before it takes over? When you hear the same self-critical voice, can you recognize it instead of merge with it? When you're pulled into envy or shame or fear, can you say, even quietly, I see what's happening here? That one moment of noticing is everything. It is the gateway between reactivity and choice, between habit and freedom, between confusion and clarity. And here's the quiet secret. Noticing doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need a journal or a ritual or a retreat. It happens right here, right now, in the breath you're taking as you listen, in the awareness that's reading these words, not just with your eyes, but with your presence. When you start to live this way, when you walk through life as someone who sees instead of just reacts, you begin to shape a different kind of strength, a strength that doesn't resist what is, but moves with it, a calm that doesn't deny pain, but refuses to be ruled by it. And that is the Stoic way. So if you're waiting for a breakthrough, stop waiting. Start noticing. Notice the patterns you keep repeating. Notice the voices you've mistaken for truth. Notice the impulses that pass through you, and don't act on all of them. Notice your life, moment by moment, not to judge it, but to reclaim it. Because when you begin to see clearly, not just the world, but yourself, you remember something powerful. You were never trapped by your thoughts. You just forgot you were watching them all along. We spend so much of our lives chasing control of situations, of people, of emotions. But the truth is, liberation was never about control. It was about clarity. And clarity begins the moment you remember this. You are not your thoughts. You are the space between them, the quiet behind the noise, the observer, not the storm. This is not some abstract philosophy. This is a practice, one you return to every day. Every time you feel overwhelmed, remember, you don't have to believe everything you think. You don't have to obey every emotion. You don't have to react to every trigger. You just have to notice. And when you do, even for a second, you reclaim a piece of yourself, a piece the world tried to confuse, a piece fear tried to bury, a piece chaos tried to steal. This is what the Stoics were trying to teach us all along. Not how to suppress who we are, but how to see who we are, beneath the thoughts, beneath the reaction, beneath the noise. So as you go back to your life, take this with you. The next time your mind begins to spiral, the next time emotion surges or thought overwhelms, pause, breathe, and remember who you really are. Because the moment you begin to see clearly is the moment you begin to live freely.